Hello and welcome to the Open Virtual Film Project. This video covers the OVFP virtual camera, which works with Unreal 5.1 and later in editor and runtime modes. Be sure to have the OVFP plugin installed before you begin. There are links for deep dive videos on the various tools provided, as well as a show workflow walkthrough in the description. To start, let's add one of these cameras to the scene by clicking the drop down in the top left of the viewport, create camera here, cam OVFP virtual camera. Once it is spawned out into the world, I like to pilot the camera by going into the details panel, right click, pilot camera. If for some reason you do not see the dark bars on the top and bottom of the screen when you resize, or are unable to pilot the camera, you might have changed the viewport type. This seems to be a bug where after you have switched viewport modes, you can no longer pilot cameras this way. You can either restart Unreal, or choose your camera from the Placed Cameras dropdown under the perspective header here. Cinematic viewport mode gives you a few more options found in this dropdown on the top right hand corner. Once I have a camera out in the world, I'm going to start going through all of the features in the details panel from top to bottom. To make sure my details panel stays locked on this camera, even if I click something else out in the scene, I'm going to click this lock in the top right hand corner of the details panel. That way if I click anything else in the scene, this is still my camera. First up, there's a dropdown that allows me to select a camera lens combination. See, I'm switching between various different here. And if I stop piloting my camera, you'll see as I change these, the lens and or camera both change to reflect the selection I have made. It also allows you to save other lens settings, such as a minimum focus distance per camera lens to reflect the real-world values. Later in this video, I will show you how to set up this dropdown using a widget in the OVFP main menu. Immediately underneath is a button that allows you to take a screenshot through the camera with a few quality of life features. As you see, when I click this button, it saves the screenshot to a new directory in your project, Scouts, the name of the level, the current date. The image is also saved with a naming convention that includes a bunch of details about the camera when the shot was taken. This naming convention can be set up under Edit, Project Settings, scrolling all the way down to Plugins, OVFP RTE Settings, and here you'll find the name format for screenshots. The names between curly brackets here are automatically generated per the camera, so you can have various auto-filled settings. Here you can also set the screenshot resolution width. It calculates the resolution height automatically. This way, every time you take a screenshot with this button, it has the same resolution regardless of the viewport size. It defaults to a width of 4096. However, if you wanted to save disk space and did not necessarily need the higher quality image, you could set this to a lower value. Next up is a toggle to lock and unlock the camera. So if I lock my camera, you see I can go into the viewport, move around, push WSAD as much as I want, and the camera won't move. It also shows locked in the top right hand corner here. And then I can unlock it and move it again. This provides the same functionality as right-click, transform, lock actor movement, just in an easier to edit place that also displays the information. This allows you to set up a keyframe and then not worry about moving it when you are modifying the scene to fit the view. I'm going to skip over the rest of the commonly available settings inside of this camera. I can make a video on those if people would like it. Be sure to leave a comment if you would. However, I do want to mention that in Unreal 5.1, there was a crop settings feature added. So now you can switch your crop to not crop, 133, 239, etc. These crop settings can be modified if you go into Edit Project Settings and search for crop. You'll see you have a default crop settings here where you can change which one it defaults to, as well as add any others that you would like. Moving on, we're going to skip down to the burn-in section of this camera. Here you can turn on and off a burn-in in the camera that shows a bunch of relevant information, such as a shot description, storyboard shot number, the name of the camera, date, current level, current sequence, camera information such as camera body and lens, any EV settings. This will switch to shutter speed, ISO, and aperture if you use that setting instead, a height of the camera off the ground, as well as the current frame of your sequence and the frames per second of your sequence, should you have one open. A lot of this information is dynamically updatable. For instance, in the corner you can see I am playing a sequence, and the frame of the sequence is currently updating. And if I move my camera around, you can see my height off the ground is updating. If I get very close to the ground, under a meter, you'll see it changes from meters to centimeters. Same thing would happen if I were to get very far away, it would switch to kilometers. If instead of centimeters I wanted to switch this to meters, I could come into my settings, go to the burn-in units, switch this to imperial. You can see I am now 2 feet 4 inches off the ground, going all the way down to inches and all the way up to miles. In addition, if I wanted to start tracking the camera speed, I can turn on track camera speed, and you can see I'm currently moving at 83 feet per second. In here, there are also some settings to track the speed of other objects in addition to the camera and add that to your burn-in. So if I wanted to track this sphere here, I go to Object Track Speed, click the little eyedropper, click the sphere. Now if I grab the sphere, you can see I am moving the sphere. In addition, if the sphere were moving and I were parent to the sphere in the sequence, it would track how fast I am moving in relation to the sphere. This burn-in is reflected the same in editor runtime and movie render queue, and will show up in any screenshots taken with the camera. In the next update, a lot of this non-user interactable information found in the current view will be removed. This was just for testing purposes to make sure that it all worked. To modify the information found in the top left-hand corner of the burn-in, you can go into the storyboard section, change the storyboard number, as well as the storyboard shot description. So if I wanted this to be the shapes fight instead, change it to shapes fight, and it is actually scene 13. A lot of the other information found in the storyboard section will be expanded upon later, but if you wanted to add any notes that are found only in Unreal, you can use them here. Eventually there will be a tool which allows you easy access to all of this information, as well as the ability to export a storyboard as a PDF with all of your shot numbers, camera names, shot descriptions, and storyboard paintovers included, similar to my old storyboard tool. If you'd like to create your own burn-in layout, make a copy of UI OVFP burn-in, found in Plugins, OVFP Content, Camera, Resources. Then you would be able to make any modifications that you would want to, such as moving the fields around or perhaps adding a watermark. Once you are done with that, go into Edit Project Settings, OVFP RT Settings, and then set the Screenshot Burn-in class override found here to that new burn-in. The frustum section of the Details panel allows you to show the camera frustum and turn it on and off here. Set its color, opacity, and length. I can also show a focus plane in the frustum, which is cropped to the frustum itself if I shut off the frustum. So I can see at the distance I'm focusing at what the camera can focus on. This automatically updates to the manual focus distance, and if you go outside of the frustum that you've created, it will disappear. This is very similar to the Draw Debug focus plane. It's just a little bit nicer to have it cropped down to what the camera can see. In addition to this frustum, Unreal 5.1 also added the ability to show camera frustums under Show, Advanced, Camera Frustums, if you would prefer a different option. The last section of the Details panel to discuss is the camera render settings. It provides various different types of post-processing overrides that are useful when doing paintovers of a scene, similar to the dropdown under Lit, but modifiable per camera and runs in any of the modes that this camera is used in. Going through the different modes, first up is a base color pass, in case you need it, an ambient occlusion with outlines pass that shows off surface detail in a very easily readable way. In order to make any of the ambient occlusion passes work, you need to go into Show, Lighting Features, and turn off Looming Global Illumination. When you're done with this rendering mode, you can switch back to Use Defaults. Hopefully this functionality will be fixed without that override in a later version of Unreal. If so, I will put a comment in the description. Inside a lot of these modes, there are a lot of sliders for tweaking exactly how it works. So I can turn up and down the ambient occlusion opacity and amount, as well as changing the outline thickness for a chunkier feeling, the outline opacity, and the outline falloff factor, which allows you to change how these lines are generated. Mostly if something's looking a little bit weird, I will play with these values to make the outlines look a little bit better. As you can see, I was able to get rid of that line there, which was tripping me up. Next of the modes is a color by ID or clown pass. To make this work, you need to click the Setup Color by ID function, and now you can see each of my objects is a differently distinguishable color, so I could go into Photoshop and use the color picker tool to make a quick mask of the object. And you need to go into Edit, Project Settings, and search for Stencil. And make sure Custom Depth Stencil Pass is set to Enabled with Stencil. Next up is a grayscale view, which has a desaturation amount. In case as you're working through a scene, you want to see it without any distracting color information, but don't want to go as far as the outline or ambient occlusion modes. A line drawing mode, same as the ambient occlusion with outlines, except for no ambient occlusion. A scene depth mode, which allows you to go inside of Photoshop later on and add fog effects or pick out different objects based on their depth. The scenes at start and end are modifiable. So if I wanted to go to the edge of my scene here, I could, or ramp it closer, I could do that as well. Then there is a standard view with outlines with the same outline settings. and a world normal view in case you want to do any specific relighting inside of Photoshop, etc. Lastly, I want to show you the camera setup tool found in the OVFP main menu, which can be opened by clicking this button here, or under the Virtual Production OVFP, open OVFP menu, and go to the Camera Builder section. Here you can modify the default camera settings for the project from that dropdown. To start, you want to choose what you're editing. We're going to be editing the default cameras, and you see it populates a list of your cameras. So I'm working on one of 18. Click the side arrow keys and step through them. There are a couple of default packages already set up in this data table setting. If you go to the None and you search CLD, you can see there's one for an Alexa 65 with anamorphic lenses, one with spherical lenses, LF and LF Mini. So if you choose one of them, I'm going to choose the Alexa 65 anamorphic and load. You see my number of lenses changed to 8, and my default lens setup changed as well. I can then go through and make my modifications. The center section is all about your camera body. So I could choose the camera body name, also the film back name. So this is an Alexa 65 open gate, so Alexa 65 OG. Choose its mesh. See I have 3 loaded in, 65 body, LF, and LF Mini. And the default width and height for that camera lens. In the top right hand corner, I could choose the lens mesh for this particular setup. So I'm in lens 1 of 16. The Alexa 65, choose my lens mesh. See, I also have several loaded into the project already. And in the bottom section, I can choose the lens name, the focal length. If I'm working with horizontal field of view instead of focal length, I can switch to horizontal field of view and use that value. Min f-stop, max f-stop, squeeze factor, number of aperture braids, and minimum focal distance. And then I can step through, do all of my cameras this way. If I wanted to add a new camera lens, I can click the Add New Camera Lens button. Adds a new one, and then I can go through, set up all of its information. I can also duplicate the current camera lens and remove the current camera lens. Once I'm done with all of this, I can come up to the editing area and click Save, and that'll update this dropdown the next time I open Unreal. So if I wanted to create one of these as a profile that I could load later, come into the setup settings over here, create a new data table. I'm going to put it in content, give it a name, hit Save. See, it automatically loads it into here, and then I can hit Save Data Table, and it will save all of the settings that I've done, all of the modifications to these camera lenses, into that data table. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching.